Welcome to episode 8 of Ed's Not Dead. I'm Robbie Dodd. I'm joined by my two distinguished co-hosts, Mr. Peter Crable.
Good day, sir.
Good day. And, of course, Mr. C.H. Siddons.
Hello again.
It's great to see you, boys.
Yes.
All right, you can find me at RW Dodd and Mr. Krabs.
At Peter Crable.
And, of course, Mr. Siddons,
At CH Siddons.
the most active Twitter user of us all.
You know what I have been doing, though? The new app online, or the new application restrictions. I put on an hour limit. Did I tell you that last time?
No.
I think you did. I don't know if it was on or off air, though.
I think it was off
yeah,
air.
you did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've
you
been
did.
abiding by it the whole month.
'Cause
Once I hit the hour limit, I'm done.
You were having some issues with how much you were doing useless scrolling on your
It's a
cell
lot of
phone.
scrolling, and it just didn't bring any joy into my life.
All right, we've got a great show, folks. Thanks for tuning in once again. We've gotten a larger and larger audience on Ed's Not Dead, as Mr. Crable lets us know all the time.
Yeah,
'cause
man.
He's obsessed with our ratings.
I am. Yeah, no, lots of people listening. It feels good.
I know. So we got a few things to plug. First of all, Mr. Krabs, the 28-day challenge
Yeah.
in February.
Yeah.
It's a big one.
Yeah,
All right.
a big one.
Tell the listeners about the 28-day challenge.
Yeah, well, the brainchild of Casey and I think, of how to do something super cool, but also kind of lame and corny.
It's going to be so good.
Yeah. Well, it's already started. I think we're 4 days in
Oh, that's
already.
right.
Yeah. 3 days. I don't know, whatever today is.
Yeah.
Anyhow, but yeah, every day at 6:10 in the morning,
Right.
we're going to tweet out a task for educators to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you have to do it.
And you
You're
have
required
to do it.
Yeah.
And they have to. Are people required to tweet in response?
Of course,
in
they should,
doing
yes.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
No, we want to get some good conversation going, and look, some of them are are fairly serious, and it's kind of like some best practices, and some of them are a little silly, a little fun, a little whatever.
All right. So,
But we're not taking weekends off, by the
That's
way.
right.
So,
That's
So
right.
it's 28 days.
Oh, it's 20.
It is
It's
20 days.
Okay. So if
Yeah.
our listeners make a commitment, they've got
They're in.
They got to be
Right.
on. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So find the 28-day challenge on Twitter
You got it.
at Ed's Not Dead PC. Also, we've been getting great feedback on our equity series. So please, if you're interested in hearing some of the amazing guests that we've had over the last 2 years, that we've kind of bundled into standalone interviews, people like Zaretta Hammond, Eric Buddington, Joe Feldman, Curtis Linton, Troy Body, all experts on equity in public education in schools. They cover everything from theory to practice.
Everything.
And everything in between. So when you check us out, check out our equity series and revisit or listen to those interviews for the first time.
Yeah. And we have a nifty little tab, interviews, on our website.
Oh,
So you
okay.
can see
So
them
they
all
Yep.
in one spot.
That's good. I looked at the website like in September.
Well, that's very good.
I know. I heard it's good. All right. And we have some big time
Big guess.
coming up in February.
Big month for us, yeah.
So we have Kathy Hoffman, who is now the newly minted state superintendent of Arizona. She ran as a 31-year-old consummate outsider, and
Yeah.
she is going to be on with us on Ed's Not Dead. We are totally psyched to have
Very
Kathy.
psyched to have her.
And then in late February, we're going to follow Kathy up with Randy Weingarten, the president of the American Federation of Teachers.
It's a big one.
Yeah, these are two big interviews for Ed's Not Dead. We're really grateful that Ms. Hoffman and Ms. Weingarten have agreed to come on the show.
Very excited.
Yep.
Just friendly nagging helps.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, look, a nicely crafted email.
Yeah.
It goes a long way.
These are two Ed heavy hitters.
big time.
We
time.
have a lot of good questions prepared, and hope you'll tune in and repeat and repeat and repeat.
Yep. All right. Show feedback. It's that time.
And I'm prepared.
You look, I don't turn to you
God.
and you give me the stink eye. You actually have some show feedback.
The deer in the headlights.
Yes,
Yeah.
so proud of myself.
Yeah.
All right.
So
go ahead. What do you got, Mr.
we had
Sids?
a lot of feedback came from when we reposted all those interview segments from our equity series.
The equity series.
We had one from Francis Frost, who talked about how inspiring it was to hear from MoCo Students for Change, and a great honor to have them at the MD, the Maryland PTSA Diversity Conference last year. And then we got another special thanks from @Mr. Kaz, friend of the pod,
Yeah.
who said, thanks once again for us and Zaretta Hammond for being my inspiration to push my students to see their culture and experiences as their strength. Just because they may not speak English yet does not mean they cannot think and reflect. And he posted a bunch of stuff on Twitter that you should all check out.
I saw.
He's been doing this assignment with his kids that you definitely need to check out and try to emulate with your classes if you can in social studies.
That guy, since the first day he started teaching, he's been a ed innovator.
Yeah,
I mean,
voracious.
He's always pushing the envelope. He puts the three of us to shame.
Well, we could talk about stuff.
I know.
That's really
but he
important.
actually does the things.
Also
in his
important,
classroom. He's
yeah.
very, very, very.
What,
thanks, Mr. Cos, and thanks, Francis Frost.
And then the other piece of feedback, not really feedback, is someone came to see you at your school recently, a previous guest.
Oh yeah, the great Nate Tinbite.
Yeah, friend of the show as well.
Friend of the pod.
What did you talk about?
We talked about student leadership in schools. Nate is on the forefront of student activism.
Yes, he is.
All the way back to last spring when student activism was really just fomenting around the country,
Fever pitch.
right? And Nate was a leader, and so he's still into it. And he stopped by and saw me. We had a great chat.
Nice.
So Nate is going places.
Yes, he is.
He's big time.
He might be hard to get on the show at some point.
I know.
Yeah.
He's probably hard to get on right now.
I saw a picture of him with Joe Biden.
Yeah,
Really?
that's right.
Yeah, posted on Twitter, I think.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nate loves the show.
Oh, good.
Yeah, he thinks we're pretty cool for three old guys. So anyway, yeah, it was good to see him. So we need to do your old man voice. We need to reach out to the youth.
We need to give him a phone call telegram. We should
phone call telegram.
Oh, phone call telegram.
All right, is that it? for show
Well, I
feedback?
would like to plug something I always say on the show is if you're listening and you like us, give us a little rating on iTunes.
Oh, yeah.
Please
do.
Just give us a comment, rating. Even if you don't want to give a comment, just give us 5 stars.
Into it. I like
We'll
it.
read the 5 stars. We'll say it's 5 stars.
Yep.
We'll say it's from you.
It's very easy to read.
Very easy.
And as always, we are brought to you by Pulp Education, a full-service educational media company specializing in leadership instruction, 21st century school reform, and just plain cool stuff.
In good times.
Good times. All right, boys. So we know we've got some big interviews in February with Kathy Hoffman and Randy Weingarten. But right now there's this big development in public education, which is the omnipresent Koch Brothers,
Indeed.
who are most well known for their support of conservative causes in the United States and the electorate. They have had a large influence on...
I think they might describe them as libertarian.
Yes. Libertarian, you think?
Yeah, they're big.
Self-identified.
Yeah.
Are they?
Yeah, yeah.
Republican leaning.
So is it safe to say, though, that there's a fair amount of overlap between libertarian and their conservative interests?
That would be
Yes.
correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, now, what are they into, Mr. Krabs?
K-12 education.
K-12 education, because everybody who's ever made a lot of money...
Knows how to fix it.
That's exactly right. So now the Koch brothers are wading into K-12 education. They are going to try some innovative things, or as what they characterize as innovative, in 6 different states in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Yet to be identified states.
Yet to be identified. They are using some nicer, friendlier, softer language to describe their interests and their role. One of the analogs that they use a lot to justify, or at least to kind of legitimize their new interest in public ed, is their role in prison reform, which was a big deal, which is also very interesting. And so now they're gonna get into public ed.
Yep.
They're coming from a premise of that it is broken. Right.
Yes, that is their initial premise. Yep.
Who in their group said it was broken?
I think it was either Stacy Hawk, who's a major Koch donor, or the guy that's the president of the network. I don't see it right off the top here.
And so they've already started giving money out. They've given money to the great Johns Hopkins University, where policy expert and Professor Ashley Berner, who I actually knew very briefly at one time, is quoted in a Washington Post article about educational pluralism, and that's kind of what the Koch's interest is being packaged in, is that they're very interested in exploring different ways to skin a cat in education, that the way we've been doing it, the system is not working. So my opening question to you guys is, without us being three cynics, what's your take on their role in this?
So we sent this article around and we took a look at it, and I was initially fairly intrigued because I was like, okay, there's some stuff in here. They talk about moving the Koch network, moving towards being a bipartisan philanthropic collaborators as opposed to a political organization. Okay, I mean, that's some positive language there.
As they distance themselves from President Trump.
Right, as they try and distance themselves. And really, it says the Republican Party as well, where they want to be rebranded as, I'm sure like an ideas organization as opposed to, a proxy for any political party or, president for that matter. So anyhow, so that all sounds, kind of decent. But then, I don't know. I think you dig a little deeper into what their solutions are to address issues, and it's two things. One, I'm not actually convinced that there's any new ideas in there. So this innovative approach that they're touting, I actually don't see anything innovative in it. They want to change public policy to address the root causes, quote unquote, of failing schools. Oh, that's it? That's all you want to do?
Right.
Great. Well, tell us, and we can just go ahead and fix it. Yeah. You know what I mean? If it's just that easy, I think to say that is a nice little soundbite, but
yeah, just like Stacey Hawk says, that education should be getting way, way better and way, way cheaper, but the opposite is happening.
Right.
What on earth is that based on?
Right.
Yeah.
I want to address that because it actually ties into our conversation last week. But all right, so root causes of failing schools, developing new technologies to promote individualized learning, which is a huge thing right now, is the self-directed computerized learning, basically where kids use a computer to learn and the teacher sort of guides them through. And again, in and of itself, I don't think that's an issue, but I think there's an underline of supplanting or the teacher as the main source of information not a main source of information, just as the catalyst in the classroom, and doesn't take into account the importance of the human relationships in it,
right.
In teaching, and then investing in teachers and classrooms.
But they're trying to sound pro teacher here.
Yes,
I mean they even throw a bone to how underpaid teachers are,
and that's the big change, right?
Right.
So Americans for Prosperity has been their political arm and has been staunchly anti-union and pro-charter school. Which, if you're a right-leaning organization, yes, that would be one of your foes. Would be a large organized labor that traditionally leans left. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they've changed some of their rhetoric, but we'll see what if any effect that has on actual policies. Because again, digging deeper, if vouchers are in there, education savings accounts, a lot of the stuff that we talked about in Nevada last season that got that was not approved and or thrown out by the courts.
Right.
It seems that plays a big role in kind of where they're going. So a little bit of wait and see, but a little bit of like where's some more details as to exactly what this looks like before passing too much judgment. But I'm not sure that it, on the whole, is really all that new, different, or innovative. I think it's just packaged and talked about differently.
Right. And I don't know what is their motive. It seems like they're not going to get any. They're not going to get an investment out of it in terms of return on investment, right? It seems like it might be just. Is it ego?
I think it's a little bit.
They know better than it's that paternalistic attitude of we know better.
According to the article, Charles Koch's son, or I guess his daughter-in-law, his son's wife,
right,
opened a school, sort of like a neighborhood school,
right,
where it sounds like they could kind of do whatever they wanted to meet the needs of the kids. I don't know how big the school is. I really don't know anything about it, but I think that sort of piqued the interest of like, oh, wow, schooling can be done in a different way. It doesn't have to be going to the neighborhood school down the street. There's many different ways. And look at this, what we're doing. This is one way to do it. So I think that his son, Charles Koch's son, I think sparked some of that. And then there was a line in there that says, one reason the wealthy donors are so amenable to investing so much in education is alarm about the next generation.
Right.
Which you think, oh, what is this alarm that they have? Maybe they're not being prepared. Recent polling shows younger people have a more favorable impression of socialism than capitalism.
Yeah, I read that.
So I think that's kind of interesting, you know.
And in reality, I think they're also filling a vacuum of federal and state input into education. In states that are not as liberal or maybe more willing to put in dollars into education, they're going to try to fill that vacuum with Koch Brother money. And they did that with their other
they have a lot of it
where they look for friendly states, and they start their efforts and look for, as we say, the strange bedfellows in that state, and then they expand their reach other places. Yeah. It concerns me that in this way, I mean, they're filling a vacuum. So on one hand, maybe they can do some good for struggling school systems and put in money where the state funding formula for actually funding schools is flawed or just deeply inequitable. So maybe there could be some good that can come out of that in states like Mississippi and even maybe even places like West Virginia, where there's some truly embedded poverty that has been generational poverty that's been going on for many, many years. So money doesn't solve everything, but money also comes with strings. Yeah. And
it makes things happen.
It makes things happen. And if the state's already not pro-union or they're not pro-teacher in that sense, I imagine they would continue being that way.
And it's also interesting, the sort of backing away from this anti-union. And when you look at the current climate where teachers are striking, but by and large, I've really only heard positive things about teachers striking, that the public sentiment seems to be behind them. So, I'm sure there's a little bit of that calculus in there, the PR calculus of oh, teachers are really popular right now. And there seems to be this common understanding of underpaid, overworked, really hard job.
Right.
So let's not bash them in the organizations. Let's say, we know and trust and respect them and we want to work with them.
But do they believe that?
Don't know.
I want to believe that they believe it. I think your point about the vacuum is important. I mean, I do think that over the years, I'm not sure what the numbers would be on federal involvement in the way of funding would be in public education in the states. Right. We know that there were, as a part of TARP, there were those school improvement grants back during the recession, but there's. There has been this place now for money from educational philanthropists, and the Kochs are now just the most recent players in this. Yeah. Bill Gates had a huge role, and teacher evaluation was his baby for a while, and there have been others. So it's
before, because I do want to talk about rich people getting into education and the net benefits.
They like education and owning sports teams. They think they can do both of those things really well, right?
So educational pluralism. So I want to get your thoughts on that. So as I understand it, and as the article says, the government funds all types of schools, including explicitly religious ones, but does not necessarily run them. And so their kind of point around this was look at all these sort of Western European liberal democracies that all have this, where the state does fund, a variety, religious, non-religious, private, public,
absolutely,
Waldorf, Montessori. I mean,
the United States is different that way.
Yeah. Well, do you think we should be doing that?
Oh, I don't know, man. I don't know if we should. Casey and I go back and forth on this all the time, in that I've always kind of contended that maybe there is enough food at the table for everybody to eat. Maybe you can have a Waldorf school next to a charter school, next to a public school, next to a Catholic school. And maybe the government should play some role in supporting all of them, because they all contribute to a common good in the country. I mean, you can't argue that kids that get a good education in a parochial private school, that's not important for the nation.
So let me make perhaps an assumption here. It is an assumption. So my assumption is that because the Kochs and the Koch network is associated with free market and small government ideals, that if this were to be the model, it would essentially come with no corresponding regulatory body. Because in order to have educational pluralism in all these different types of schools, you would need a very robust and a very large bureaucracy to oversee it, which seems to be counterintuitive to kind of some of their core principles.
Right. And to answer your question, I'm not sure I buy it, but the deal is this, is that to some extent it already exists in this country.
Right.
Not necessarily federal involvement or support or even state support of different kinds of schools. Charters, yes. Vouchers now in some places. But what's been the major wedge issue that has divided the Kochs from Trump?
Social issues.
No.
Immigration.
No. He's the Kochs are all for. They disagree with him. Yes.
Yeah.
I would say it's free trade. So to answer your question about regulation, they want an unfettered approach to this kind of to trying different models in education. But that's what I think Dr. Berner's talking about with pluralism. Let's take the shackles off and see what bubbles up. And that's innovation.
But it also goes against. It shows that they have no idea how a school is run or how a student is taught. There's a lot of nuance to a school.
How do they not know that? That's a huge assumption.
Not you. I'm talking about them.
Why don't you think they know anything about education?
I would say no. And I would say that to say that you can open up a school and run it by free market ideologies or in a capitalistic way and just hope that, whatever the best solution is going to be the best solution based on capitalist ideals is not how a school works.
Then how does a school work?
A school works as a very complex social system of human beings interacting with one another, not based on the greed of others or the capitalistic
greed is
desires.
Good.
Well, I think the capitalism in the free market idea is not like in how the actual school is run. I think it's more in how students choose the school that they go to. I mean, that's long been the conservative sort of utopia of everybody gets a choice of everything, and the best schools will have the most enrollment, and the worst schools will close.
But Casey,
I'm not defending it. I'm just saying that's.
But on a micro scale, you've long been the one that gets frustrated with how innovations get snuffed out by the system.
Yeah.
That the
right, how hard it is
to bring anything to scale that's different.
Yeah.
In public schools. So I mean, I don't know. To me, I'd like to. The three of us have long talked about how could we build a better mousetrap? How can we innovate and kind of break away from just the accepted, legitimized kinds of ways of schooling?
Yeah,
and I mean, I think people want to do that. I just refuse to operate from the premise that it's broken.
I agree.
I think that's what you said the other day. I think that's
starting
a
an
strong
argument.
point.
Yes, I agree.
It is. And to me, that's what exposes them.
Yeah. Right, and the point that you said about the schools are getting way, way worse when they should be getting way, way better.
That's
I mean, last episode we talked about sort of modern society and parental involvement and all this stuff. It's like, are they really that much worse? It's like we seem to be churning out a lot of highly capable kids. Does it meet the needs of everyone?
Right,
absolutely not. Does it need to be addressed? Of course.
I'd like to say to the Kochs that the largest generation to enter the American workforce has entered the American workforce over the last decade, and those are the millennials.
Right.
Over 70 million of them. It's an echo boom to the baby boom. We educated them, almost all of them, in public education.
And is there overarching theme of incompetent morons?
Exactly. I mean,
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. So, I mean, again, this no system that Betsy DeVos contends exists continues to churn out generations that drive the country.
Do stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Do stuff, are ready to do stuff. So, I mean, I think to your point, Casey, it's a great point that they fill a vacuum. That if they can drive research and development in education, I'm all for that. As long as you somehow manage that it doesn't undermine the really positive things about the way the system works.
Yeah.
I agree. I think it's once we get into this deeper, there's going to be talks about we'll be talking about curriculum. What does that look like?
Oh, there's
what is that?
There's
what
no
does that entail?
details.
Are they gonna withhold information or not allow certain information because it's funded by the Kochs?
Yeah, a lot to figure
There's
out.
a lot to chew on.
Yeah, but what if they said, "Wow, hey, listen, we want to bring to scale this awesome program. It'll serve as a terrific transition between elementary and middle school. One teacher will teach 4 subjects in their classroom, and kids will be more socially connected and demonstrate higher achievement." What's that program called?
Project Success.
Okay, well, so that's not a typical part of most middle schools.
No,
and if you can find those kinds of innovations, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
Once you open up the spigot and you let that money come through,
You're a little scared about that.
well, I mean, money talks,
And
there will be strings involved.
What do you think, Randy Weingarten? When we ask her,
she'll
What is
kill this.
You think
She
so?
will hate it.
I can't wait
yes.
to ask her that.
Oh yes,
It's gonna
there's
be so
a lot in
awesome.
here that's pretty anti-AFT principles.
It is, but they're cozying up to the unions. They're trying to be.
Yeah, they're trying.
They're trying to be nice. Yeah.
So let me ask you as kind of one last thread here. Sorry, I brought up wanting to talk about should rich, deep-pocketed Zuckerbergs and Zuckerberg Chan initiatives and Gates Foundations and Koch networks, do we want them involved at all in education? I understand that there could be like a dearth of money and that they can help fill some of that. But I guess my question is it worth it to have them involved, or does it distract us? Does it lure us with false promises? There's a big ed tech sector out there that is growing and continues to grow.
Yeah.
And when you look at organizations that get funded and a lot of like Silicon Valley VC money,
Right.
oh man, they're all ed tech companies.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yep.
Is that good or bad?
I'd say no. I'd say it's bad.
It is bad.
Bad.
It's a bad thing.
I was hoping our socialist would answer first.
I'd say no.
Yeah.
Zuckerberg put $100 million into Newark public schools, and the studies came out and it said it didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just how the money was spent, or how he decided that it should be
Yeah,
spent.
and the federal
but
government put billions into school improvement grants, and there was no
not much to show for it.
Not much to show.
So what does that say about putting money into education? But you have states like Massachusetts where they get the highest per pupil spending of any state, and they have arguably the highest outcomes in the country.
They do. And they stick to their plan.
They stick to their plan
They do.
over a period of time.
Yep.
They invest in high quality,
Yep.
effective teachers, and they invest in their development over time. I
Absolutely.
think Massachusetts does a really good job at
They
that.
do. It's the model state.
It is, and it's so. What does that mean? Is just because you get an iPad for every kid in California public schools, that's not going to mean anything. They're not going to be working in a year.
Yeah, that was John Deasy.
Yeah, it was.
He worked over this way at one time.
Now,
The only thing I'll say though is
Yeah.
who funded the Italian Renaissance? Right.
The
Medici.
is
Okay. So there's always been this role, this intersection between those with wealth and social or cultural interests. This is just the most modern version of rich people wanting to give back,
leave a lasting mark.
Correct. They want to leave a legacy. The one thing you know is that
Why does it never work then?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure it.
And I know it's a broad statement, but why in some of these incredibly deep pocketed?
Well, you got to remember, for everything they fund that doesn't work, maybe that's important to know that it doesn't work. Otherwise, you've never tried
We don't know,
anything.
to do it.
Yeah,
again,
I mean,
not
I
do it
think
again.
the value added model. It's been tried now across the country. It's very controversial. It was one of Gates's favorite things. I think it was tested. I think it had some impact on education. Certainly, not all negative. So, I'm not totally down on it.
What about this theory?
And by the way,
Yeah.
they get bored and move on to other things. I mean, Gates is now funding nuclear reactors.
Oh, is he really?
He's totally moved on from education. So
He's like, I tried.
I tried it.
He's like, I don't know. I put like $7 billion into that.
One thing they
Whatever.
learned is teaching is not easy.
Yeah. When I would postulate, and I have no idea whether this is in any way true, but part of the reason maybe a lot of these ventures don't have this sort of huge impact is because you treat schools as vacuums,
Right.
And you don't address any of the other stuff that's going on that lead to poverty, that you don't address any other stuff that leads to the situations that students bring to school where they're not accessible to learn, or where they're not, they're just, the odds are stacked against them. Yeah. And so, you give them an iPad, but that doesn't address any of the other root cause issues.
It's all Band-Aids.
Yeah. All Band-Aids.
And it's what we've talked about before, where schools are seen as the cure for, Robbie, what you've talked about is the cure for all that ails us in society.
Yeah. Maybe the Koch brothers should focus on making sure that upper management in Fortune 500 companies actually hires people of color and women. And so there's a place for kids that get great educations to go. Because otherwise the private sector is mostly closed. So, that might be a good place to turn their attention. All right, well, stay tuned. I'm very curious about Dr. Berner's role in this at Johns Hopkins. I want to do a little more digging. This educational pluralism thing is fascinating.
It is. It's really interesting.
Yep. All right, folks, don't go away. When we come back, Mr. Sids, what do you have for us?
I got a wonderful quiz.
Okay, he's gonna design it during the break.
No, I'm done.
You're done?
Yeah, we'll just give people a break.
Let's do it.
All right, put us on pause and come back. Welcome back, folks, to Ed's Not Dead. Thanks for not going anywhere. Once again, we are brought to you by Pulp Education, a full-service educational media company specializing in leadership, instruction, and 21st century school reform. All right. It is that time of the show that we that we know that everybody enjoys the most.
This is what they tune in for.
It used to be Dear Betsy, but now it's your quiz show.
Sick of talking about Betsy.
All right.
We did talk about her last time. But other than that, we're done.
Other than that,
we're done.
Every other time,
Yeah.
I'm sick of it.
We are up against the end of our show here, so it has to be a brief quiz.
Oh, this is a good one. So the Koch brothers, as you know,
they're
worth how much? Approximately.
Ooh, that's a good one.
This isn't part of the quiz.
$50 billion.
Nope.
$25 billion.
I'm going to say...
Between the two of them.
I'm going to say $15 billion.
$100 billion.
Oh, my
$100 billion. So,
are you kidding
my
me?
question for you both.
Yes.
What can you do with $100 billion? All right? So, I'm going to ask you...
from here to the moon.
I'm going to ask you a question.
Yes.
And then you have to give me each your answers of how many you think you could buy.
Okay. Got it.
You could build 20 new Rams stadiums.
You could build...
Because that costs $5 billion.
my God.
$5 billion.
$5 billion.
Jeez, you could
For
build
a stadium.
You could have
I guess it's a
trillions
arts
of
district or
hamburgers.
entertainment district.
Right. So you could build a bunch of those.
Yeah.
Every major city could get one of those.
Okay,
go
such a
ahead.
great investment.
So, first one. How many iPads can you buy for every U.S. school and college student?
With $100 billion?
With $100 billion.
For every college or U.S.
For every
school.
U.S. school and college student.
45 billion iPads.
100 million iPads.
Very close. 200 million.
Yeah, baby.
200 million. All right, next one.
I was a little off.
You're a little high.
44 billion off.
You're dividing your 100 billion.
Yeah. Too many. I got my zeros mixed up.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, how many... this is current in some ways. How many Starbucks cafe lattes can you buy?
Soy latte.
Soy latte.
How many?
How many?
With $100 bill?
With $100 billion.
I'm gonna go with Mr. Krabs. You want to go first? Or you want me to go?
35 billion.
Yeah, I was gonna go a little higher. I was gonna say 75 billion.
I got scared off.
This one's for Crable. 33.3
Hey.
billion.
Nice, Mr.
Tied
Krabs.
up.
Good
All right.
job.
Next one. How many space shuttle Endeavors can you buy?
Oh, that's pretty expensive.
Is that one? I don't even know. Space shuttle Endeavor.
We don't-
Was that the last
we don't do
functioning
those
space
anymore.
shuttle?
They wouldn't do them anymore, but
They were such an 80s thing.
They were.
So cool.
Yeah, they were kind of cool. How many can you build of those? I would say you could build 4 of those.
I would say you could build 500,000.
Wow. 59. 59.
I win that.
Yeah. You're
Oh,
close.
well. You're a lot closer.
I'm a lot closer.
All right. Next one.
59 you could build.
Those are so expensive.
They are really expensive.
I knew they were really expensive. I didn't know they were that much.
All right. How many islands, for example, like Dark Island in Vermont, which is for sale, how many can you buy?
Like
with $100 billion.
$100 billion. I'll go with 1,000 islands.
I was gonna say 1,000. I'll say
The dressing.
500.
3,600.
Killing it.
1,001.
Worth $25 million each.
All right, how many
And then
questions?
last
we got
one.
Okay.
Last one. I'm sick of this. Which country could you bail completely out of debt?
That would be
Iceland.
Greece.
Greece.
I got it.
This was Robbie's game right here.
Okay, I did all right. I did
That
okay.
was very good.
All right, good. That was a good quiz,
All
Mr.
right.
Sid.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. That's how much money we don't have.
All right, folks, thanks for tuning in. A few reminders. Mr. Graves, remind our audience about the 28-day challenge.
Participate in the 28-day challenge. We got great little meme going on with some Billy Mays and meme.
I'm already tired of seeing the tweets, but
You're going to see a lot more of them. I made sure to tag you in every single one of them.
all right.
And on Facebook, I did it too.
Thank you.
Yeah, but get on, participate, and leave some silly little comments for us.
All right, cool. And folks, don't forget to check out our equity series. Go back, revisit, or listen to the first time. People like Zaretta Hammond, Eric Buddington, Joe Feldman, Curtis Linton, Troy Body, all the heavy hitters in the ed field on all things equity and equality and public education. Check out the equity series.
Right here on Ed's Not Dead.
Right here on Ed's Not Dead. Also, February is going to be a very big month. We are excited to have Kathy Hoffman on our next show and Randy Weingarten at the end of February, the president of the American Federation of Teachers. You can find me at R.W. Dodd, Mr. Krabs,
At Peter Crable.
and Mr. Sid.
At CH Siddons.
And you can, of course, follow us on Twitter for the show at Ed's Not Dead PC. Check out the website. Spread the word. Leave us some show feedback, and we will read it on the show. As always, thanks for tuning in. Boys, say goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.